totally unexpectedly, when you look back to the beginning of the season, Ayrton Senna in the brand new McLaren, for the first time with Ford power this season, is leading the World Championship. But Alain Prost, thanks to his victory in San Marino and the retirement of Ayrton Senna, which compensated for Prost's retirement in South Africa, there's just that 2-point gap. And if Alain Prost can win this one, it would give him a small cushion over Ayrton Senna, who I know is aiming for third place today. He would be satisfied with third. He would obviously rather finish second or first, but realistically, if he can finish third and get 4 points, that would still leave him within striking distance of the World Championship lead when he went to Monaco for, from his point of view, hopefully a record 6th victory. But anyway, back to Spain. There they are. That's a very, very long straight. They exit turn 15, which is at the, just out of the top of your picture, at some 155 miles an hour, accelerating. They go over the start and finish line, and you can see that at about 180 miles an hour. And by the time they get to the bridge, which just precedes the right-hand turn 1, they're doing some 200 miles an hour, right up to the 90-meter board, and then they back off, change down, brake hard. And this circuit, unlike many, has got some gradient in it because it climbs from turn 1 up to and including turn 3. There are a series of very, very long, sweeping right and left-hand bends where the G loads on the drivers are absolutely tremendous, 4.5 to 5 G, which means to say that their body weight or head weight is going to be 5 times normal, and you can imagine the strain on the neck muscles as they're trying to keep their heads up to see where they're going. And we had several people going off in the warm-up this morning when it was damp and greasy. Damon Hill went off. He did a Nigel Mansell, as Nigel did in Monaco years ago. He put his rear wheels on a white line, like the one that you can see through the middle of your picture now, and the slippery paint just broke the adhesion between his tyre and the tarmac, and off he went. But fortunately for him, he went off into one of the volcanic ash traps as opposed to sand traps, which are around this Catalunya circuit. And his car was dusty but undamaged. They cleaned it up, and he's been out for his couple of assembly laps before going onto the grid, and the car is perfectly all right. You've just heard Jonathan Palmer talking to him. So the lead cars on the grid, that is to say the 2 Williams, Senna's McLaren, and the Sauber of Wendlinger, who is behind Schumacher and Patrese, have got traction control, but the 2 Benettons of Schumacher and Patrese have not. And I'm quite sure you're going to be hearing a lot from all of us about Riccardo Patrese this afternoon, because all of a sudden, for a lot of reasons, some of which we will be talking about, Riccardo has suddenly come good here in Spain after struggling with the Benetton and having all sorts of psychological and other problems with it. He came good yesterday and was 5th fastest on the grid. He repeated that today because he was 5th fastest in the warm-up. He says he now feels settled and confident with the car and the team after 5 long years with Williams and perhaps being spoilt a little. But it's going to be very interesting to see the Italian's performance, because there is no doubt that he is under a lot of pressure from his team and from the media. This race, 65 laps, which is, as usual, just under 200 miles, 192 to the nearest full mile. And the lap length is 2.9 miles. I've told you something about the corners. The quickest one is the last one, where they come plunging downhill out of the 130 mile an hour blind turn 14 into the last right-hander at 155 miles an hour. And you are about to see that final assembly lap. Now that is Gerhard Berger's car. You're sitting almost in the cockpit with the Austrian, who is very phlegmatic about the poor performance of the Ferraris this season. And away they go for the assembly lap. Alain Prost on your right, Damon Hill on your left, Ayrton Senna temporarily. Damon Hill hopes moves ahead of the Williams Renault. And the yellow and green cars, of course, are Michael Schumacher's Benetton. There's Patrase's Benetton, Carl Wendlinger. And Johnny Herbert stuck on the grid. Johnny Herbert is still sitting there, and that means to say, poor Johnny Herbert, after his highest grid position, 10th, is going to have to start last, because you're not allowed to make up places. You're with Ayrton Senna now.
Yes, at the moment, he still hasn't got away. The mechanics around the car. But engine's running. The suspension's going up and down, so they've obviously got a problem with the active suspension. Car bouncing up and down a bit funnily.
Which is ironic, because when I was talking to Johnny just before the race was to begin, he was saying that the car has been very reliable, including especially the active suspension. And the good news is that he's just accelerating away now and will be able to catch up the cars in line, which are making their way gently around the track on this assembly lap. But as I say, appalling luck, and poor Johnny seems to have more than his share of it, because instead of starting 10th, he's going to be starting in 26th position. That means to say that Mark Blundell, who's starting 12th on the grid, will have an advantage, because instead of having Johnny Herbert's Lotus in front of him, he'll have a clear track. Alain Prost leads round, Damon Hill, Ayrton Senna third on the grid, Michael Schumacher fourth. Now this is the 155 mile an hour right-hander I was telling you about, and you can see the long, one of the longest Grand Prix straights of them all from the camera on 3 times world champion Ayrton Senna's McLaren Ford. Senna will come up behind Prost. Damon Hill peels off to the right. Prost, of course, has got the advantage. Tremendous power from the Renault engine.
See, the cars tend to follow in line astern until they get very close to their grid position. That's for a reason, namely that this is the side of the track that is cleaned by the cars going all the time. They stay on the left-hand side of the straight in normal running, and with these hot, sticky tires, they pick up any rubbish, any dirt that might be on the circuit, so they go off the racing line for as limited time as possible and just move over to their grid position. There's the view from Ayrton Senna's cockpit.
Johnny Herbert coming up at the rear. You can just see him coming into his position on the left-hand side of your picture now. Now we wait for the traditional sight of the man with the green flag to indicate to the starter that all is clear on the grid. Look for yellow flags. Away! Senna closing up on Alain Prost. Damon Hill is ahead of the Frenchman, and Damon Hill is going to lead into the first right-hander. A beautiful start, and Ayrton Senna is tucked up right behind him. Prost trying to drive right out the outside of the Frenchman. Hill leads, and Prost is second. This is Ayrton Senna's car that we are with. Now, you'll be able to see the power of the Williams, particularly on that long straight. And everybody got away well. There's Jean Alesi trying to come up through the field in the Ferrari, tightly bunched at the rear. And we're going to be watching particularly the performance of the 2 Swiss Saubers, because they went extremely well in practice, with Carl Wendlinger in 6th position. There is Michael Andretti, and he has got Alesi behind him. So, Hill, Prost, Senna, Schumacher, Patrese 5th, Andretti is up into 6th position. So the American has got a good start this time. There is Alesi 7th behind him, Wendlinger down to 8th position. And now Ayrton Senna, as they come towards the close of the first lap in this 65-lap Spanish Grand Prix, is going to have, I suspect, the slightly demoralising experience of seeing Prost and Hill stride away from him on sheer power. This is turn 15, the end of lap 1. And it's Prost leading, Hill second, Senna, Schumacher, Hill leading. There is Damon Hill, Prost number 2 behind him. And you can see that they're already starting to ease out a gap, and Michael Schumacher is tucked up under the wing of the McLaren Ford of third-placed Ayrton Senna. 5th is Patrese, 6th is Andretti, 7th is Jean Alesi. In 8th position, JJ Leto, 9th is Berger, and Prost is going for it with Senna, with both of them. It's
a replay of the start, and Well, rather a brief one. Back to the race, and Senna clinging on, but I don't think he's going to be in touch for very long, as the Williamses can afford to play themselves in quite steadily and then get into their stride. Prost will be quite happy to trail teammate Hill for a few laps until at least they've seen off the opposition and can have their race on their own, I'm quite sure.
Well, the interest now is this. Here we are, and somebody running off on the top right of your picture. It's one of the Tyrrells, and it's Katayama, Okio Katayama, the Japanese driver. The Tyrrells have had an awful practice. They've had engine problems, they've had car problems. That car is basically 3 years old.
He was back on the circuit then, but the right front wheel was in the air. I think he had a flat left rear tyre, or certainly there was damage. So, end of the straight. Prost just coming out to get a better view, not to attempt to pass, and he went a little bit wide there as a result of getting the better view. And Senna clings on.
Ayrton Senna doesn't look it, but it's over a second behind as Johnny Herbert comes into the pits. Now look, this is a unique system that Lotus have. He actually comes into the pit. There is a sort of sled underneath the car. The driver presses a button. The wheels come up by themselves from the active suspension. The mechanics change the wheels, punch a button on the back of their guns, which lights a light, and the man at the front, when he sees all four lights go out, indicates to the driver that he can sprint out, because by now, of course, the driver will have pressed his button a second time. But this is no tyre stop for Johnny Herbert. It's something much more significant than that. His active suspension dumped itself on the line. They got it going again, but there is obviously the problem. With Damon Hill leading on lap 3 of 65, it's not the first time he's led a Grand Prix in his short Formula One experience, but he's looking pretty secure at the moment. On the other hand, Alain Prost, the very long driving Grand Prix driver, has got plenty of time.
Had a good shot then as Damon, as soon as he got the car straight, you saw his head move as he just checked his mirror to see exactly where Prost was behind him, and that's important as they go onto the straight. But in fact, as I surmised, Prost is in no hurry at all to make an attack on his teammate, and I'm quite sure he'll let Damon just relax and try and lead him away from the opposition, and then he'll start to slowly turn up the heat. Prost is one of these drivers who just builds up and gradually increases the pressure. But for the time being, this is good experience for Damon, because leading a Grand Prix is a unique feeling, especially for an inexperienced driver, to be out in front by yourself, nobody to help you, nobody to follow, and it's nice that he can be doing this without pressure, because Prost's not pressing him, Senna's comfortable distance behind, so Damon has no reason to hurry, just to get used to the feeling.
And I suspect that Ayrton Senna, that we're riding with now, is already driving a tactical race. He's actually the fastest so far over a single lap, 1 minute 27.8 on his third lap. But now the two Williams are starting to ease away from the McLaren Ford, and if Ayrton Senna can stay there and hopefully keep them in sight, he will be able to maintain pressure on them and to take advantage of it if either of them falters. No sign of that at the moment. Lap 5. Hill leads, Prost second, Senna third, Schumacher fourth. Patrese is still in fifth position. In the fifth position, Andretti is in sixth place, going well. Alesi is seventh, Leto is eighth, Gerhard Berger is ninth, Alio is 10th, and Michael Andretti's problem driver, Carl Wendlinger in the Sauber, who started off sixth, has dropped down to 12th position. Mark Blundell is 15th, Derek Warwick is 16th, Martin Brundle is in 17th position, and as you know, Johnny Herbert has been into the pits as Damon Hill there, his fastest lap there is, of course, well off the race record, which is held, the lap record, which is held by Riccardo Patrese, 1 minute 22.8, 128 miles an hour. And Jonathan Palmer has news for us in the pit lane.
Johnny, after that superb qualifying, 10th on the grid, you didn't even manage to leave the grid on the proper start. What happened?
You spoke to me before the race. I think we had a slight problem with on the warm-up lap. It was fine, no problem. Then we sat in the grid, they plugged everything in, and it was all fine. But when they started it up, the car started jumping. It was the left rear, and it kept resetting itself even when I was going round. And then the orange light came on eventually, which I reset. Then it was okay, but then it went again. So we came in, but they found a problem, but I'm not sure what.
So it's an active suspension problem. Simple active suspension problem.
Yeah, it seems to be. I'm not really sure, but yeah.
Okay.
And as you can see, Damon Hill is now extending his lead. It's 1.25 seconds over Alain Prost, and surely something must happen to change Johnny Herbert's luck sometime this year. 2 fourth places, admittedly, but a failure to finish in South Africa, and he's had so many interviews as a retiree with Jonathan Palmer that's what his crack was about. The problem was, Jonathan, you talked to me before the race began. Ayrton Senna now is 1.3 seconds behind Prost, ahead of Schumacher, Patrese and Andretti, Senna's teammate, 6th.
Yes, and Senna and Schumacher are both holding on surprisingly well to the Williamses. Whether or not they'll be able to keep it up, whether the Williams is driving with a little bit in hand, which I suspect, but at the moment both are close enough, particularly Senna, to be able to take advantage of any weakness or mechanical problems that the Williamses might encounter. As far as tyres are concerned in this race, we don't really expect too many tyre stops. There's no problem with the wear rate, but some people might stop if they feel they've got a drop off in tyre performance, and putting on a fresh set can often improve the performance quite a lot. So there may be pit stops for that.
Lap 7, and already the interest and excitement is what you are watching. Damon Hill leading, Alain Prost second. Both of them want to win this race for their different reasons. Damon Hill, because it would be his first Grand Prix victory. Alain Prost there, 3 times world champion, because he wants to have the maximum points cushion between himself and danger man Ayrton Senna at Monaco. Now this is Zanardi and Wendlinger on a replay. I don't know what happened, but we're soon going to see. Zanardi, who was so spectacular at Imola when his car burst into flames, runs wide, goes onto the grass. Karl Wendlinger goes through, and they were battling for 12th position. So Wendlinger has taken it over the line to complete another lap into lap 8. Towards us, 0, Damon Hill, with his helmet carrying the colours of the London Rowing Club. Alain Prost in second place. Ayrton Senna is now 2.5 seconds behind Prost, and the same amount ahead of Schumacher, who is 4th. Patrese is still 5th, and Andretti 6th.
And there you see from the caption that the Williams drivers are beginning, Prost starting to turn up the heat. New fastest lap. Every one of the last 3 laps has been done by a Williams in this race. Well, I tell a lie, Senna did it 3 laps ago, but the pace is turning on, and they've inched away from Senna a little bit. But significantly, Prost is now getting closer to Damon Hill.
And we had a generous tribute from Alain Prost yesterday, because he was asked what the biggest surprise of 1993 had been to him so far, and he said the McLaren, because as those of you who are enthusiasts will know, McLaren had been using Honda power since 1988, lost it at the end of last year when Honda retired from Formula One. Ron Dennis, the head of McLaren, had a big struggle to find a replacement engine, settled on the Ford very late in 1992, as a result of which the new car had to be designed very rapidly, and Prost said McLaren have done an absolutely magnificent job. And now Alain Prost is, as James just said, really getting the hammer down and is starting to close on Damon Hill with the fastest lap, 1 minute 25.4.
Yes, and on that last lap, as he completed the lap, you can see he was closer than he'd been before. He'll need to be closer than that still in order to pick up the toe exactly right to get past his teammate on the straight. So Prost will be looking to get ideally about 4 or 5 lengths behind Damon Hill as they come onto the straight. 3 corners to go. Prost is too far behind at the moment. Sorry, wrong part of the circuit. Now we've got hairpins. A couple of hairpins. Now the right hand 180-degree corner, and then 2 quick right-handers, the second of them being onto the straight. Prost is not really close enough to tow past Hill this time.
And of course they both know what the situation is. Hill can see Prost in his mirrors, Prost can see Hill ahead of him. They're both in radio contact with their pits, and Damon Hill has again gone round fastest. He's certainly not giving in to Alain Prost. Why should he? There are no team orders. He wants to win this race. 1 minute 25.216 compared with Riccardo Patrese's lap record 122.837. That's 128 miles an hour. And Prost in practice went round in pole position in 1 minute 17.3. And there's Ayrton Senna hanging on in 3rd position, pulling away from Schumacher. He's now about 2 seconds ahead of the German in the Benetton. And again demonstrating that the Ford Power is doing a better job in the McLaren, and Ayrton Senna exploiting it to the full. Patrese is still in 5th position, but he's dropping back from Schumacher. 6th is Andretti still, 7th is Alesi, and Andretti is on his own, so he's got no danger problems from Wendling or anybody else as he has in previous races, and stands a good chance of going more than half distance, which is what he did in Imola, and that was the longest he had gone, having crashed out in South Africa, Brazil and Donington.
Prost just about close enough to get the tow. Remember, he's now in the hole in the air made by Damon Hill's car, and he's coming alongside, and Prost takes the lead. No fight from Damon, very neatly done, almost looked like beautiful team drill. And yet another new fastest lap for Prost. Remember, of course, that the fuel load is coming down in the cars, and that makes them lighter and therefore faster on acceleration and more effective in cornering. This is the replay, of course, of that very straightforward classic overtaking manoeuvre. Come onto the straight quickly, perfectly positioned, long straight. Car in front makes this hole in the air, and there you see the effect work of how it works. And we see it again from the helicopter. Now, at what sort of rate, if any, can Prost pull away? This is now a big challenge for Hill to see if he can stay with the most successful Grand Prix driver of all time in terms of results, and one of the greats, Alain Prost. And Damon has dropped back quite a lot on that first lap behind. He's over 1.5 seconds down on Prost, but he will automatically go almost immediately to a second down because of the whereas when you're going on the straight, the hole in the air is a help to you. When it comes to going around corners, if you're within a second of the car in front, it then reverses and becomes a hindrance, because by going through less air, the partial vacuum of the hole, you get less air over your wings, therefore less downforce and less grip. So you drop back straight away.
Right, and I'm keeping a very careful eye on this man, Ayrton Senna, because he's actually taken 1 second out of Damon Hill's advantage over him. It's down from 3.5 seconds to 2.5 seconds. There is the Brazilian. You can see there's quite a gap before Michael Schumacher in 4th position. Look now, if we hold the shot, which we don't, for Riccardo Patrese in 5th place, 9 seconds behind Michael Schumacher. So it's Williams-Renault leading, Williams-Renault 2nd, McLaren Ford 3rd. This Benetton Ford in 4th position, another one of them. Riccardo Patrese is 5th. The 2nd McLaren Ford of Michael Andretti in 6th position. Now starting to get the hang of this Formula One, which has been a problem. And Martin Brundle out of the Spanish Grand Prix on lap 12. And you can see what the problem is. Martin actually has flu and was feeling very, very groggy yesterday. I talked to him this morning. He said, I feel better. Now, it's a Suzuki on the left in the footwork Mugen. Martin, well, you don't need me to tell you what's happening. You can see he's locked up. His left front absolutely stationary. He lifts the brakes as he goes onto the grass, but he's on the wrong line, and the rear tyres cut into the grass. Here's another replay. Suzuki goes through, no problem for him. Martin Brundle then out of the race to join Ukiyo Katayama, who went out on lap 2, Johnny Herbert, who went out on lap 4. 25 cars started this race out of the 26 who tried to qualify, and the one who failed to start was Michele Alboreto.
Yes, and that will be a disappointment to big disappointment for Martin Brundle, because we'd all hoped that he was making a mirror image season of last year, when he had a bad start also to last season, and then it all started to come good at Imola. Well, it came good at Imola, and he was in the points and then stayed that way for most of the rest of the season. He had a terrible start this year, came good at Imola, and we were hoping for some consistent point scoring, but there we are, a disappointment for Martin, and unfortunate to be unwell at such a physically demanding circuit. I'd have to drive anyway when unwell.
Right, now a lot of people have asked me to try and go lower down the field during a race, so here goes. So there are 23 drivers left out of the 25 who started. Alain Prost is leading, Hill second, Senna third, Schumacher fourth, Patrese is fifth, and Michael Andretti is in 6th position. Alesi 7th, then it's Leto, Berger 8th and 9th. Alio is 10th ahead of Comas, Wendlinger and Zanardi 13th. Barrichello, the Brazilian, is in 14th place. Mark Blundell, who's caught the flu from Martin Brundle, is 15th ahead of Derek Warwick. Then it's Suzuki, Badoa, Thierry Boutsen 19th. De Cesaris is 20th, followed by Fittipaldi, Barbazza, and there's 22 drivers left now, of course, with Martin Brundle out of the race. We're on lap 14 out of 65, and we were riding with Damon Hill there, who is now about 1.3 seconds behind his Williams team leader, Alain Prost. And Prost is on target for his objective of 10 points from Spain to add to the 24 that he already has from his victories in South Africa and San Marino. And there he goes. Now, Alain Prost, cool, calm, a superb tactician in the yellow helmet there. That is Christian Fittipaldi, and he is chasing Andrea De Cesaris as Alain Prost laps them, and Fittipaldi is in 23rd position. De Cesaris is 22nd. Alain Prost coming up. Now you see we're with Prost. He goes through and takes Fittipaldi's Minardi Ford, who has got behind him his teammate Fabrizio Barbazza, the man who surprised a lot of us by finishing 6th in the last 2 Grand Prix at Donington and at Imola. And Prost is now challenging Andrea De Cesaris, who's had engine problems, who's had handling problems in practice. He passes the Italian, Andrea De Cesaris, the man who's driven in more Grand Prix than anybody else without actually having won one. This is his 186th Grand Prix. And Prost, you see, a copybook example of how to deal with traffic. He's just calmly threaded his way through. And now Damon Hill has done the same thing. He has passed Barbazza, Fittipaldi and De Cesaris, who are fighting for 19th, 20th and 21st position. Underneath the bridge, now he's doing about 200 miles an hour, Prost, or was, until he backed off there. And the gap between him and Damon Hill is just under 2 seconds, with Hill now 3.3 seconds ahead of Ayrton Senna. And Riccardo Patrese is speeding up. He's just done his fastest lap, and he's in 5th place, 12 seconds behind Schumacher.
Yes, and Senna arrived on that little gaggle of cars that they're lapping just as they started the twisty half of the circuit, and that'll be quite a problem for him, because not nearly as easy for him to get through the traffic in a McLaren as it is for the Williams drivers, powered by that massively powerful Renault engine. It makes slicing through the traffic a lot easier. There's Hill, 2 Williamses coming up on Brixton's Jordan. And going past, through the ultra-experienced Brixton,
who is 19th in the race and about to be lapped by Damon Hill. Thierry, in contrast in length in terms of his height with his teammate Rubens Barrichello, and Gary Anderson, the Jordan designer, has had to make substantial alterations to the Jordan Hart car to accommodate Boutsen, who is comfortable for the first time in a race. And he took over Ivan Capelli's place at Donington, but already he has been lapped.
Yes, and I surmised, Senna has indeed lost time to the leaders. That exchange with the back markers has benefited the Williams. They were able to get through more easily. Senna now some 6 seconds behind Damon Hill.
Prost is coming up now to lap the sole Lola Ferrari of Luca Badoer, the Italian who was the European Formula 3000 champion last year. And as I told you, his teammate Michele Alboreto failed to qualify. The Lola is still a long way from being right. The 2 real problem cars these days, teams in terms of their car's performance, are Ferrari and Lola. They've both got Ferrari engines, but in both cases it's the handling rather than the engine that is causing the problem. And Lola have got a new car on the stocks. They've made changes to the car here, new front wing, new underfloor, revised suspension, but it hasn't made much difference. Now watch Damon Hill lap Luca Badoer as they come through, and Hill is on his 18th lap now. Badoer slows down, moves over, lets the Englishman through. 32-year-old Damon Hill, this is his 7th Grand Prix, 3rd in the World Championship, and he is fulfilling all the promise that he showed as the Williams tester for the last 2 years. Meantime, Michael Schumacher there in the yellow and green Benetton has lapped Brazilian Christian Fittipaldi in the Minardi Ford, and he is in 20th position. So the speed of the Williams Renaults compared with the tail enders is terrific. Prost lapping in about 1 minute 25 seconds. Fittipaldi's lapping in 1 minute 30 seconds. So Prost is gaining 5 seconds. Now here is Schumacher lapping Fittipaldi. The man who is 4th laps Brazilian Fittipaldi, who is 20th. And Fittipaldi has scored points this season, finished 4th in South Africa. And he's one of the youngest drivers in the race, so he's got plenty of time to improve. He's the son of Wilson Fittipaldi and the nephew of the great double world champion Emerson Fittipaldi. So, Michael Schumacher, who was hoping for more from the Benetton in this race, and to be honest, I think it is showing, because Schumacher and Patrese down in 4th and 5th positions are certainly being shown the way by Ayrton Senna, as you would expect, of course, because arguably Senna is the best driver in this race, and that would include even this man, Alain Prost. Both of them 3 times world champion. And Senna, with the Ford V8 engine, is having to give away a substantial horsepower advantage to Alain Prost that we are riding with now. Now let's see if we can pick them up on this circuit and take you around. It's quite a difficult one to identify where they are. So Prost is coming through now. This is turn 14. No, I tell a lie. He's coming up to turn 14 when he's come out of this long left-hander, the hairpin bend. Now, this is turn 13, which he takes at about 80 miles an hour. Accelerates hard. And when I tell you that this Williams car will accelerate from 0 to 140 and back and break down to 40 miles an hour in about 4 seconds, it's difficult to comprehend, but that is how neck-snapping their acceleration is. Now, Prost into turn 1 from 200 miles an hour down to second gear, about 100 miles an hour. It starts to climb here. The left-hander, that's turn 2, up to the Curvone in 5th gear, up into 6th gear here, down into another right-hander, which is turn 4, about 80 miles an hour, accelerating to 120 as he exits it in 4th gear, accelerating to 140 miles an hour into the left-hander at Seat. That was 2nd gear, now 3rd, 4th, 5th gear, still swinging left, still in 5th gear. This is about 150 miles an hour into the right-hander, climbing uphill now to the 140 mile an hour blind corner at Kampsa, 4th gear. Now flicked through the right and left down to La Caixa, the very, very tight left-hander, and that is a 3rd gear corner. And that's about 70 miles an hour as he enters. Accelerate hard into the right-hander at turn 13, the Banque de Sabadell. Into turn 14, and you have just done almost a lap with Prost as he goes with Damon Hill now. And that's the gap, you see, between the two Williams cars. First, Alain Prost, second, Damon Hill. Williams-Renault first and second, with Prost leading Hill by 2.4 seconds as they go into their 20th lap.
Well, I'm down with Martin Brundle in the pit lane. Martin, we saw you go off with the car looking very unstable. Just what happened?
Well, I think that the right rear tyre burst. I'm sure we know the quality of the Goodyears is absolutely excellent. That would have been generated by a slow puncture. The fact that Aguirre was beside me was totally coincidental. It just reduced the amount of space I had available to save the car.
So what sort of speed were you doing when the tyre went?
About 190, something like that.
Worrying moment?
Not at the time, because your concentration is fully on trying to keep the thing out of the wall, but when you reflect on it tomorrow morning, maybe you'll think about it. But you know, that's just part and parcel of what we do.
Very hard luck indeed, Martin. Thanks.
Well, if it wasn't worrying, I bet it had his attention, and that for poor Martin Brundle was the 4th failure to finish a Grand Prix as Damon Hill laps Aguirre Suzuki in the footwork. Martin Brundle failed to finish in South Africa, Brazil and Donington, made up for it to a great extent with that fine 3rd position at San Marino, but out for the 4th time through no fault of his own. He goes here at Spain as Alain Prost completes now his 21st lap in this 65 lap event. Damon Hill very much has him in sight, 2.6 seconds. And Ayrton Senna crosses the line as I talk to you. And the gap between the McLaren and Damon Hill is now 9.5 seconds. And the one thing that we certainly do not expect the Williams-Renault to be is unreliable. Meantime, Damon Hill knows that he still has a chance of winning this race. He's not all that far behind Prost, who's coming up now to lap Derek Warwick in the blue helmet in the footwork car. And Derek is in 16th place now. And ahead of Derek Warwick is Mark Blundell in the second Ligier. The first one, of course, was that of Martin Brundle, and he's retired, as you know. So, let's watch Prost. And remember that Aguirre Suzuki caused a bit of problem, caused some problems at Imola by holding up Carl Wendlinger, for which Suzuki was given a stop-go penalty of 10 seconds. Derek Warwick is now ahead of Alain Prost, and this is giving Damon Hill, and you can see it for yourselves, the opportunity to close up on his teammate Alain Prost. The gap was 2.6 seconds. It's considerably less than that now, and it's because Alain Prost is held up, I'm sure unwittingly, by Derek Warwick. Now, this is where Prost should dive out from underneath the wing of the footwork Mugen. He'll leave it to the last second in the hope that he can get past before Damon Hill, but his hope is thwarted. Damon Hill goes through as well, now much closer to Prost on lap 23. Now, this is Mark Blundell next in Prost's eyes.
Yes, and of course, here's a replay of Prost going past, seen from Damon Hill's cockpit, and Hill, quite rightly, jumps straight through, jumps Warwick into the corner, and they're both of them just getting past Blundell, who made the space, because, of course, with Renault power, he would have been potentially a bit of a hold-up, and this traffic may well temporarily have delayed them a bit and bring Senna a little bit closer than the 9 seconds he is adrift. But of course, just a minute or so later, Senna will catch them up. A couple of minutes later, he will have to get through the traffic, and that gap is liable to go out again.
Well, we've got a potentially interesting struggle developing for 5th position, because Riccardo Patrese is just 3.5 seconds ahead of Michael Andretti, who is the last on the leaderboard, as it were, in 6th position for 1 World Championship point. And Andretti is lapping about half a second faster than Patrese in front of him, as Prost and Hill thread their way through the tail enders. That is Zanardi, Sandro Zanardi, in the sole Lotus Ford, with the retirement of Johnny Herbert being passed by Prost, as we get a replay here. So we're with Damon Hill. You see Prost passing now. Damon Hill does the same thing, and we're back again with Hill further round the lap. This is live as opposed to the replay, and Damon, who, as I say, was 2.5 seconds behind Alain Prost, is right in the Frenchman's wheel tracks now on lap 24. Prost leads, Hill second, Senna third, Schumacher fourth, Patrese is 5th, and Andretti is in 6th place.
Yes, and Hill would be wise to stay as close as he can to Alain Prost, which is what he's doing, because if Prost just gets any sort of misunderstanding with a back marker, that might present the lead back to Damon Hill. Quite heavy traffic that they've been in for some 3 laps now. Senna now under 8 seconds. That's Carl Vendinger going past, but running quite a lot of wing on the Sauber, and Hill's towing right up to go inside Alain Prost. He's challenging Prost for the lead. There's a little bit of discretion there from Damon Hill, but he certainly had a chance, but Prost kept him right over on the inside, which was good tactics. Keep him on the dirty part of the track. He didn't dare brake very late then. And Eric Comas now, so they're coming up on the midfield runners thick and fast. This is where quite a close battling goes on, and of course, while they're battling amongst themselves and busy with their own race, they tend to be less cooperative to the leaders who are lapping them. And we've got a car off the road there,
and it was Andre de Cesaris, Katayama already out of the race, so that's another terrible race for the Tyrrell team. They have failed to finish in a single Grand Prix this year, but up front there's de Cesaris's car. And up front, of course, it's a very delicate situation between Prost and Hill. As I've said before, they both desperately want to win this race. Damon Hill will not get any thanks if he pushes Prost so hard that either or both of them go off the circuit to give the race to Ayrton Senna. So Hill has to be circumspect, and Prost will be very determined that the Englishman does not pass him. But this is Damon's opportunity, because he can close up now.
He's in great position to pick up the toe just right. Don't come out too soon, Damon. Well, he didn't actually stay in the toe all the way, and I think I thought he may have been able to get past him then if he'd really wanted to. But as you say, quite rightly, Murray, whilst Damon Hill, to his eternal credit, said yesterday at the pole position press conference that the Williamses are that far ahead of other people. They have a duty to race each other and to put on a proper show, but he has to temper that duty, obviously, with taking no risk whatever to wipe out the team by having a tangle between the pair of them, and also not to press either his own car or Alain's sufficiently hard that they get into mechanical dramas.
And that's Philippe Alliot, the Frenchman, who has returned to Formula One to drive for the Larousse Lamborghini team, who is ahead of Alain Prost now. I well remember Alliot holding up Nigel Mansell at Portugal, going off into the barrier, and his rear wheel came off and missed Nigel's head by a matter of inches as he passed him at about 150 miles an hour. So Alliot, who was very quick in the warm-up this morning, 8th fastest, moves over, and the leaders go through to complete their 26th lap. Now, is Damon going to have another go at Alain Prost? Well, Alliot is fighting back as they come down to the end of the straight and into turn 1, climb to turn 2, swing right at turn 3. They're doing about 150 miles an hour around this corner. One blithely says 150 miles an hour. It's very difficult to comprehend, never mind to go round a corner at that speed. And it's still Senna. He's now 8.7 seconds behind the Williams. Schumacher is still in 4th position. Patrese is still 5th. Andretti 6th. Alesi 7th. Leto 8th in the Sauber. Berger is 9th in the second Ferrari. 10th is Philippe Alliot, that you've just seen lapped by the 2 Williams. So they have lapped everybody up to the 9th place man, Gerhard Berger, who will be next on their list. 11th is Comas, that you've seen lapped. 12th is Carl Wendlinger, the same. Zanardi is 13th. Barrichello is in 14th place. Mark Blundell 15th. Warwick 16th. Suzuki 17th. Then Fittipaldi, Bader, Boutsen, and Fabrizio Barbazza is 21st and last, and of course was lapped long ago and is soon going to be engulfed by the Williams Renaults for a second time. Now, what's happening here? This is a replay. There is Zanardi coming towards us and a spinner in the rear. And it looks like a footwork. In fact, it is a footwork. But whether it was Derek Warwick or Aguri Suzuki, I know not. I apologise, we'll find out. But
yes, it was hard to tell. But I thought it was Derek Warwick. I saw a flash of just a little bit of blue helmet, but we've had rather a back view of the car there, I'm afraid. But we'll confirm that to you. But I think it was Warwick having the spin. The Williams is new fastest lap of the race by Alain Prost on his previous lap, which having just got clear of the traffic. And yes, it was Derek Warwick who had the spin.
And while you watch the leaders, I can tell you that JJ Leto has moved up in the Sauber and is attacking Jean Alesi in the Ferrari for 7th position. And there is Ayrton Senna lapping Carl Wendlinger, who is in 12th position. So the first 3 have lapped the Austrian, who's not having a good race by his standards, because he's gone extremely well this season, both in qualifying, not in the races. He's failed to finish so far this year, whereas his teammate JJ Leto, who's coming up on Alesi, has already scored World Championship points. Now, here is Senna lapping Eric Comas, who is 10th in the Lamborghini, turns in and nearly chops the nose off Ayrton Senna's McLaren Ford, and the Brazilian undoubtedly had to slow down a bit, and that's given Wendlinger, who'd got superior momentum. Now here's a replay. Now watch Comas move across as Senna dives into the gap and put his wheels just up on the curb and had to back right off. I should think there would have been a few Brazilian expletives inside his yellow helmet there.
Yes, it was a bit of a long shot by Senna. I'm sure he was ready for Comas to do that, but he was hoping to intimidate Comas into making room for him, as Comas really ought to have done, in view of the fact that he was being lapped. But of course, Comas was aware of Wendlinger being close to him, and they're having their own race. Comas is in 10th place, Wendlinger in 11th, and Leto still behind Jean Alesi, and it's going to be hard work for him to pass, because Sauber does tend to run quite a lot of wing, and Senna still frustrated behind Eric Comas, who was not very cooperative with the Williamses either, but of course they've got that extra bit of power to push them down the short straights and get alongside. So Senna really will be quite frustrated, because apart from anything else, the the Roosevelt Lamborghini engine is quite quick on the straight, because Senna's not really making any progress, but he'll have a go from behind. And he's got alongside this time, and I should think he's pretty angry. It's very frustrating when you're trying to chase the leader or leaders, as we look at the very leaders themselves, as Ayrton Senna is doing. It's very frustrating. Fastest lap for Damon Hill now. They're into the 1:22s and approaching the old lap record. To be held up by back markers, and particularly when you're at a car disadvantage and you've got very little means at your disposal to regain that additional gap imposed upon you by a back marker.
And Damon Hill, second of these cars, has just gone round 1/10 of a second off Riccardo Patrese's lap record of 1:22.8, and you can see how close he is to team leader and race leader Alain Prost as they complete their 30th lap. So they're almost on the half-distance lap now in this 65-lap Spanish Grand Prix, stretching away from Ayrton Senna in the McLaren Ford, who just hasn't got the sheer grunt to lap the tail-enders and midfield men with the aplomb that he used to have when he had an enormous amount of excess power with the Honda engine behind him.
Well, one can't be sure whether the Williams Renaults are racing or not, but it looks to me as if they are. And the interesting thing is that when Prost took the lead, he looked as if he was going to pull steadily away from Damon Hill, but the traffic put a stop to that, and now I think Hill has upped his game a bit. The confidence is there, and I think he's proving able to stay with Alain Prost on merit. I'm quite sure Prost is not pushing to his absolute maximum, because he doesn't need to. Hill just caught in the traffic there, and then it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see when Hill does get caught in the traffic, how long it takes him to regain the lost ground. Coming around to complete another lap. They got clear track in front. Chance for Damon to break the lap record in his pursuit of Prost.
And you saw that Fabrizio Barbazza has been lapped for a second time. They've just passed Andrea De Cesaris, who has therefore somehow ungummed himself from the compromising position he was in and has rejoined the circuit as Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari comes in now. We didn't expect anybody to be stopping for tyres. They're all fitting Goodyear's C compound tyre, and he sprints out in 5.5 seconds, and that was on lap 32. But Gerhard is notoriously hard on tyres, and this is a circuit, of course, which is very smooth. He's probably got a bit of wheel spin. His active suspension, we know, is not working, and that would have compounded the problem and probably accounted for him coming in for the sole tyre stop that we have had so far. 5.5 seconds on lap 31. And Alain Prost leads, so we're into the second half of the race now with the Frenchman, and we're with Damon Hill. You can see Alain Prost, Williams Renault ahead. Senna is 17 seconds behind Hill now, so the Williams have got the race in their pocket, provided they can just keep going. Senna is 8 seconds ahead of Schumacher, who is 20 seconds ahead of Patrese in fifth position. And Patrese is 6 seconds ahead of Michael Andretti, who is going well and is about to enter the second half of the Spanish Grand Prix, and that would be his longest Formula One race distance so far if he does so, and that will do a lot for the Americans' confidence. Meantime, Senna has speeded up a bit, but he's still slower, and noticeably so, almost a second slower per lap than the flying Williams Renaults. This is a fascinating struggle that we're watching, because it is the age and experience of Alain Prost in his 188th Grand Prix, 3 times world champion, and he has won 46 of those races, against the comparative inexperience of Damon Hill, who is only in his 7th Grand Prix and driving magnificently, as for the second time Prost comes up to lap Luca Badoer's Lola Ferrari. And the leaders are on lap 33. Prost is past Badeur, who moves over and lets Damon Hill through. And they have lapped Gerhard Berger. I saw the Ferrari in the background now, just then. So that means to say that Prost and Hill have lapped everybody up to JJ Leto, who is in 8th position. The order, lap 33, Prost, Hill, Senna. Schumacher in 3rd position, ahead of his teammate Patrese 4th, Andretti 5th, 6th, I'm sorry. Alesi is in 7th position, still running in the Ferrari, ahead of his teammate. 8th is Leto, 9th is Wendlinger, the two Saubers together. 10th is Comas, 11th is Zanardi, then Barrichello, Blundell, Suzuki 14th, Gerhard Berger 15th a lap, Derek Warwick a lap down, 16th position, Fittipaldi is 17th, Badeur 18th, then Boutsen and De Cesaris. And Damon pushing all the way, because this is not a team demonstration. This is a battle for the lead on lap 34 out of 65. And Damon Hill, of course, is getting marvellous experience, literally following in the wheel tracks of one of the greatest Grand Prix drivers of all time, studying Alain Prost's line, his braking, his acceleration. Williams have used all through the practicing period an electronic throttle with no physical connection between the accelerator pedal and the engine. But for the sake of not risking any reliability problems, they've reverted to the normal system for this race, and they're coming up now to lap JJ Leto, the Finnish driver, the ever cheerful Finnish driver, who's now got a car worthy of his talent in the Sauber Ilmor. And by the way, hats off to Ilmor, the Brixham firm who have produced engines for Indianapolis for so long and are now in Formula One with their V10 engine. They've got a new version on the stocks backed by Mercedes-Benz money, and I have no doubt that that will be even better than the existing fine engine, and the Saubers will then really fly. And the Saubers, by the way, have still got passive suspension. They don't have the more advanced and sophisticated active suspension system that the Williams, Renaults, the McLarens have, and others, of course, including Ferrari, who wish they hadn't got it at the present moment. It's given them more trouble than they would like to admit to. And now they're up to Jean Alesi. Prost and Hill are shortly going to lap Jean Alesi, the Frenchman in the Ferrari, who is in 7th place. You can see there he is. I, traditionalist that I am, do not like that white stripe on the Ferrari. I would like to see it all scarlet, the famous Ferrari colouring scheme, but it's not to be. And Hill now is certainly in a position where he can attack Prost and go for the lead, because this is the 200-mile-an-hour point. He could go for it here. He's going for it here. Is he going to get through?
Well, it's kind of him. I get the feeling, Murray, that he's making it look like a race. He pulled out. He had no intention of passing it. And looking at their lap times when they're not in traffic, they do seem to have eased up. I strongly suspect that we've got an order from the pit now. You're in a lot of traffic. Prost has probably asked that he can ease up and not be raced. So hopefully Damon will continue to make it look like a race, but I don't think it is a race anymore, I'm afraid to say.
Oh well, there you go. Prost leading then on lap 36 out of 65 by a whisker in terms of time, 0.3 of a second as they cross the line to complete the lap. Ayrton Senna, I'm sure, is now driving for 3rd position, as he said he intended to before the race even began, because mentally he had conceded victory to the Williams with their superior performance, their excellent handling and their unchallenged reliability. And if Senna finishes 3rd here, he won't be too unhappy. That will give him 4 points to lift his total to 30. Prost would be on 34 points if he won the World Championship, so they would go, if he won the race, so they would go to Monaco separated by only 4 points. And as I've said earlier in this commentary, Alain Prost is distinctly concerned about Ayrton Senna in the very nimble, light carries less fuel. McLaren Ford around the twists and turns of Monaco, where Ayrton Senna has 5 times demonstrated his supreme class by emerging victorious.
Just a word, Murray, on that pit stop from Gerhard Berger. It wasn't expected, it was for tyres. Goodyear hadn't, in fact, expected any tyre stops here. They thought the circuit would be reasonably easy, although the tyre wear from Gerhard's Ferrari was rather more than they expected, so that could open the way, perhaps to a few precautionary pit stops in the race.
Yes, that's interesting, because the concern before the race was not about wear at all, as you say, but more only about a drop-off in performance. But of course that news gets communicated throughout the pit lane pretty quickly. Everybody, Goodyear will make available to the other teams the information on the state of Gerhard Berger's tyres, and they can then make their own decision. But here come the Williams in perfect formation, and maybe Jonathan can see if the Williams team will tell him if they have actually slowed up a little bit and are driving to team orders. But a new lap record for Damon Hill, or rather new fastest lap of the race, and not quite the lap record, but he's just lower. There we are, 1:22.971, so hasn't slowed up too much at the moment, and he does seem to be pressing across. Well, I hope he's racing. I hope they're having a race.
These marvellous pictures that we're getting remind me so much of 1978, when Mario Andretti in the Lotus 79 led Ronnie Peterson for race after race after race, and Schumacher has been into the pits now in the Benetton. Here he is emerging. Let's see if it's affected his place. No, just behind him is Riccardo Patrese, so Michael Schumacher is still 4th on new tyres, but Riccardo Patrese has closed right up in 5th place, and he is just ahead of Michael Andretti.
Yes, and so that, I'm sure, would be as a result of the information about Berger's tyres, that straight away the Benetton team have felt that Michael Schumacher is quite hard on the tyres. He really gets everything he can out of the car. As a result, they probably felt bring him in as a precaution, because he will now be safe to the end of the race, and a new fastest lap now for Prost. So the two Williamses are going quicker, but are they going quicker by as much as they absolutely could if they were really pushed? Because remember, with the fuel load coming down, the cars do get quicker and quicker and quicker as the race progresses.
Yes, one of the interesting things about this circuit at Barcelona is that, being fairly new, it's still maturing, so to speak, and in fact this is making the surface have more grip, and there's been more tyre wear, and they've had to run a harder compound for this race than they expected, and that's also why the pole position time has been 2 seconds faster than last year.
And Schumacher and Patrese have just gone past absolutely together. It's a very, very close thing between the two Benettons now for 4th position. And Riccardo Patrese, who has had a cloud hanging over his future of late in the Benetton team, because he's not gone nearly as well in the Benetton Ford this year as he went in the Williams Renault in preceding years, is right up with Michael Schumacher, challenging for 4th place, a long way behind Ayrton Senna. But it's still, as I was saying, this sort of mirror image of Mario Andretti. Now that is 0.03 of a second off the lap record of Riccardo Patrese, interestingly enough. Damon Hill, if he can just go 0.04 of a second faster, he will be the new lap record holder in Spain. And I was saying, Mario Andretti and Ronnie Peterson, from race after race in the fabulous black and gold Lotus car in 1978, were leading and winning races, as Alain Prost and Damon Hill are dominating this Spanish Grand Prix. Now 21 seconds ahead of Ayrton Senna, soldiering on for 4th position, ahead of Schumacher and Patrese, together battling for 4th place, with Senna 3rd. In 6th position it's still Andretti, 7th is still Alesi, 1 lap behind the leaders Leto is 8th, Wendlinger, his teammate, 9th, Comas is 10th ahead of Zanardi's Lotus 11th, Barrichello is 12th in the Jordan Hart, then Mark Blundell 13th in the Ligier, 14th is Aguri Suzuki in the footwork, Gerhard Berger is down to 15th position ahead of Fittipaldi. Derek Warwick is 17th, having spun off, and coming to a standstill in front of us as I talk to you and turning into the pit lane. You can't see him, I can, is Andrea De Cesaris, who retires from the Spanish Grand Prix. I thought he had before, but he certainly has now, and that is on lap 41. There you just see the Tyrrell being pushed into the pit lane. He chose a very convenient place to stop. That's the only gap in the pit wall. There's a sliding section which they have just slid shut. And what's this? This is Badoa and Barbazza. Barbazza spinning off in the Minardi, and I bet that's the end of his race, because he's in the volcanic ash and he won't get going. So that's Katayama out, his teammate De Cesaris out, another awful race for Tyrrell. Johnny Herbert out, Martin Brundle out, and Fabrizio Barbazza. And that means to say that now in the Spanish Grand Prix there are just 20 cars left out of the 25 who started, and Alain Prost leads Damon Hill by a varying amount, but always a lot less than a second. And Damon Hill is now 1/100th of a second off the lap record. He's just gone round in 1 minute 22.84. And Hill's dropped back. Hill has dropped back and he's coming into the pit lane. We're with Damon Hill now. Now, will Ayrton Senna move up into second place? Damon seems to be going very slowly indeed. He doesn't look as though he's under power to me, or if he is, he's going much slower than I would expect him to. And I'm watching for Senna, who's just gone through and up into second position. It's a retirement. Damon Hill is retiring from the Spanish Grand Prix, and that is awful luck, because he had driven absolutely superbly. He retired in South Africa, he retired in San Marino, and I have no doubt that Jonathan Palmer will be finding out what the problem is, and we'll let you know as soon as we know ourselves. But meantime, the patient and persistent Ayrton Senna is now potentially the winner of 2 more World Championship points than he might have expected. He was aiming for 4 points for third position. He's now up into 6 points for second position if he finishes where he is now. And of course, with Damon Hill out, here is the replay. You can see how close the Williams cars were there. Prost and Hill, with smoke coming out of the back of the Williams Renault. So Schumacher goes up into third place, Patrese goes up into fourth place. You're watching the new second place man, Ayrton Senna, and out of the race goes Jean Alesi. Well, now this is dramatic, because that's 2 cars on virtually the same lap. Alesi was in 7th position, and that means to say that Leto comes up. Race order at the present moment is Prost, then Senna, Schumacher third, Patrese fourth, Andretti up into 5th place, Jean Alesi out, and so Leto is now in 7th position ahead of Wendlinger, and 9th is Comas, 10th is Zanardi, 11th is Barrichello, and in 12th place, Englishman Mark Blundell. Well, now, Prost will probably know about Damon Hill's retirement from the radio. And Jonathan is with Damon Hill.
Damon, that looked bitterly hard, like you were having a tremendous scrap out there. Just what happened?
I think the engine's failed. I think there's a lot of oil and steam around the place, so just made a terrible noise, and that was the end of it.
No warning apart from the noise?
No, it was going fine, and everything looked okay. The temperatures looked all right. But it's very, very disappointing. We've not had many engine failures at all. The engines have been fantastic all year, and eventually that sort of thing's going to happen, unfortunately.
Now, we've been wondering whether or not that was a genuine scrap you were having with Alain, or whether you're just making it look good for the cameras.
No, I think we're having a race, actually.
Do you think you would have beaten him?
Well, he wasn't getting away.
You look very good indeed, Damon.
Okay.
Great sympathies.
Thank you.
As ever, Damon Hill modest in defeat, and very pragmatic, sensible chap. And Alain Prost is now well away, 24 seconds ahead of Ayrton Senna.
Yes, well, I thought David didn't sound very convincing on he thought he was having a race, but anyway, he was certainly trying to have a race and would have liked to have had a race because he's a natural racer, and but team orders are team orders as Derek Warwick comes into the pits. And of course, people stopping for tyres now are not making by any means the best use of 2 sets of tyres, because they'll make much too little use of the second set to make the proper use. And of course, Warwick had a spin earlier, may have flat spotted his tyres a bit, but that was quite a while ago. I suspect it was more just for wear and running out of grip, but of course it's difficult to, what Jonathan said about the surface of the circuit still being bedded in, as it were, and the conditions therefore being more changeable than they're used to. And of course, normally the teams can anticipate more accurately than this how the tyres are going to perform, and if they know that a pit stop, a tyre change is going to be necessary, they'll make it usually just after 1/3 distance, because that's how you spread the work as Cross slicing past the other footwork. But with the heavier fuel load, the car being that much heavier at the start of the race, it's just after 1/3 distance normally. It's generally reckoned to be where the first set of tyres has had half the work, and the second set can do the other half.
Well, the McLaren team will be heaving a sigh of relief that Damon Hill is out of the event, because quite apart from the fact that it moves Ayrton Senna up into second position, it means to say that the Constructors' Championship is going to be closer than they feared. They were saying to me just before this race began, we're 10 points behind Williams now. Well, they would have been even further away if both Prost and Senna and Hill had finished. But now, with Prost on a potential 10 points and Senna on a potential 6, the Williams lead over McLaren in the Constructors' Championship will only go up by 4 points. And for that, no doubt, they will be thankful, as Prost pulls out and passes Michael Andretti in the McLaren, and the American is in 5th position. So Prost, Senna, Schumacher and Patrese are the only drivers on the same lap now.
And interestingly enough, that despite having new tyres on, Schumacher is making very little progress in getting away from Riccardo Patrese, who is certainly having far and away the best weekend that he's had for a very long time, including last year as well as this season. He qualified only a 1/10 of a second slower than teammate Schumacher, far and away his best qualifying performance this year, and he was losing ground at nearly a second a lap to Schumacher in the opening 10 laps of the race, with nobody between them. But maybe the sight of Schumacher coming out of the pits just in front of him has given him a charge, because he's holding on to technically the more grippy car because of its fresh tyres driven by young Schumacher. So Patrese, under some threat of the sack, has really got his act together as far as motivation is concerned, and is delivering the job. But of course, that's not the problem with Patrese. It's his ability has never been in question. It's his motivation and his willingness to use all of his ability, and that hasn't been evident for some time, but he's brought it to bear this weekend.
Well, now just into the box has come the ever-chipper Johnny Herbert. Johnny, you've had the misfortune to talk to Jonathan Palmer, again, your nemesis, but you really are having a dreadful season so far, apart from your 2 4th places.
Yeah, it was a bit of a shame, because the car, for some reason, when I just did the warm-up lap onto the grid, was no problem. Then we restarted and it started jumping up and down and doing funny things. They tried to cure it, couldn't do it, and then we found once we got back in the pits there was a wire that was loose in the back, and that was obviously doing the problem.
Now, when you got away late, instead of starting 10th on the grid, and incidentally, everybody, we're watching the Williams come up now to try and lap Eric Comas in the Lamborghini powered Larousse. You were going to start 10th on the grid, you had to start 26th. That must be a real deflator.
It's quite a big deflator, really, yeah, because we've really done most of the hard work. we get the car better, we get it on 10th position, very happy with the race setup. And then you have a silly little wire that has a little jangle and a little hip and a hop, and the wheels go everywhere. So it's a bit of a shame, but you know, it doesn't happen very often.
Johnny, your luck must break. Let's hope it happens at Monaco. Thanks for coming up. And Alain Prost is on his 48th lap. He's just gone round in 1 minute 24.8, so he's backed off a bit, because that is exactly 2 seconds off the lap record, and 2 seconds longer on a lap means that a driver of Prost's calibre is driving very well indeed within his capability. Ayrton Senna, that you're looking at on lap 48 out of 65 in second place, is now 20 seconds behind Prost, hoping that whatever happened to Damon Hill will also happen to Alain Prost. But I judge and hope from Prost's point of view that that's unlikely, because as Damon himself said, the Renault engines have given hardly any trouble at all since the V10 was first introduced, and it's now on the third development of that engine. And Bernard Dudin, right now we're with Prost. Who is that ahead of him? It looks like Alessandro Zanardi. No, it's the footwork of Derek Warwick, and you know that Derek Warwick has spun earlier on. He is currently well down the field and is about to be lapped in 15th position for the second time by Alain Prost, who completes his 48th lap. And a 20-second cushion, which is what Prost has, is a very comfortable one for a driver indeed. It means that he can drive at, I don't know what percentage of his ability, James may have a view on it, but I would guess about 90% of his ability, and go round as regularly as a metronome without any problems. And Senna will be doing the same thing. He's lapping as near as makes very little difference in the same time as Alain Prost, maintaining the gap at about 18-19 seconds.
Yes, Senna is definitely still chasing. The lap before last, he did his own personal fastest lap of the race, and quite rightly, I mean, he won't want to take any risks, but he'll want to press as hard as he can just to keep Prost pushing his own car mechanically. He knows he's got no chance of catching him if Prost has no problems, but just making him drive the Williams to nearly maximum could, of course, bring on any mechanical weakness in the Williams. And in the meantime, his teammate Michael Andretti is headed for his first finish, and there's a new fastest lap, and Michael Schumacher, and that might have just squeezed under the old lap record, but so he's finally making that fresh set of tyres tell. Michael Andretti, of course, hasn't finished a Grand Prix yet, and he's running in 5th place, and he's over a minute behind teammate Ayrton Senna, and if Senna does keep the pressure on all the way to the end to chase Prost, then Senna will have lapped Michael Andretti, and this at a circuit where Andretti did quite a lot of testing in December. He knows it well, and he now knows the car well, and the performance of America's top driver, or joint top driver, is proving something of a disappointment in the higher echelons of Grand Prix racing.
Well, Michael Schumacher in 3rd place that we're riding with is actually just 0.02 of a second outside the lap record, which is still held by Riccardo Patrese, and I don't know whether anybody will have any need to go a lot faster to try to beat it. There's no kudos from breaking the lap record apart from pride. There are no World Championship points involved, and Schumacher looks to me to be driving for 3rd position. He's 45 seconds behind the man you are watching now, Ayrton Senna, who is some 18 seconds behind Alain Prost. And on this lap, which is the 51st out of 65, Patrese is now some 14 14 seconds behind Schumacher, so he's dropped back in 4th position. Andretti is 5th, so McLaren are doing well. They've got both their cars for the first time this season in the World Championship points in the closing stages of a race. 6th position is JJ Leto, who's again going to be scoring a World Championship point for the Sauber team. 7th is Eric Comas. His teammate Philippe Alliot scored a couple of World Championship points for the LaRousse team, and Comas may well end up scoring one here. Zanardi in the Lotus is 8th. Barrichello is 9th in the Jordan Hart. Mark Blundell is 10th. Suzuki is 11th. Berger is in 12th position. Fittipaldi is 13th. Boutsen in the second Jordan is 14th. Derek Warwick is 15th, 3 laps down. Luca Badoer is 16th and 17th, and just about classified at the present moment is Wendlinger in the second Sauber, although he's 7 laps behind. He's obviously had a major problem. I don't know what it is, because we've been concentrating on the leaders, especially this man, Alain Prost. And now that is a lap record. 122.76, 128.31 miles an hour to Michael Schumacher in the Benetton, and so he will be able proudly to say that he's been the quickest man in this race, because I don't think Alain Prost is going to speed up to try and beat the young German. 24 years old, and what an incredible Grand Prix career Schumacher has had, because he only came into Grand Prix racing in 1991 at Spa, driving for Jordan, and then last year he won his first Grand Prix victory in his first full year of Formula One racing. And there's Prost now. Is he going to score his 47th Grand Prix victory in this superb career of his? The little Frenchman who has scored a record number of World Championship points, 723 and a half to be exact. And if you wonder how you score half a World Championship point, the answer is that you win the Monaco Grand Prix for McLaren in torrential conditions, just beating Ayrton Senna, who was then driving for Toleman, but the race was stopped early, as a result of which only half World Championship points were awarded, and instead of getting 9 for a victory, Alain Prost got 4.5.
Suddenly a rush of activity down here in the McLaren pit, and I think we can expect to see Ayrton Senna come in. He's certainly thinking about it.
Thank you, Jonathan. Well, Senna is some 40 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher as he comes into the pit lane on the 53rd lap. So since he's only got about 12 laps to go, he was obviously concerned about, and this is a long pit stop. The left rear is stuck. You can see the wheel gun going on. Now we could be seeing Michael Schumacher coming through any second now. And as Ayrton Senna emerges from the pit lane, I'm watching for Michael Schumacher to come round the 155 mile an hour turn 14, and he does it. Now, Schumacher is very close now to Ayrton Senna. I would estimate that there's about a 4-second gap between them. And remember that Senna is on preheated tyres, but they won't be totally at race temperature. He will have to be a little careful on this first lap on his new tyres, and this will give Michael Schumacher the opportunity to close up on the Brazilian as Alain Prost goes through and completes his 53rd lap. He's on lap 54 out of 65, just 11 laps left to go between him and a magnificent 47th Grand Prix victory to lift his World Championship points to 733.5, a quite incredible score. Now there is Prost, and he's coming. That was Riccardo Patrese just going through the picture in the Benetton Ford. Patrese is in 4th position. So by the end of this race, there's only going to be 3 people on the same lap, potentially. And they are, of course, Alain Prost, Ayrton Senna and Michael Schumacher. Now, you're looking through the lens of Alain Prost's camera at the Benetton Ford of Riccardo Patrese, who looks as though he is going to finish in his highest position this year, which would be a big fillip for his confidence was pretty shattered before this race. He finished 5th in Donington, in the European Grand Prix, but failed to finish in the other 3 in South Africa, Brazil and San Marino. And now the gap between himself and Alain Prost, who's about to lap him, as Prost goes through to complete his 54th lap, is shrinking rapidly. Into turn 1. This is 200 miles an hour, stand hard on it. Round turn 1 at well over 100 miles an hour, so they lose 100 miles an hour in the last few yards before the corner. That's how good modern carbon fibre disc brakes are. And Riccardo Patrese will now see that distinctive blue, white and yellow shape of the Williams Renault, with the red, white and blue helmet of Frenchman Alain Prost topping it, getting closer and closer, and Michael Schumacher is going quicker and quicker because he realises now that he's actually got a sporting chance of maybe getting 3rd position from Ayrton Senna, and he's broken the lap record again. We're on lap 55 out of 65. Prost leads 50 seconds ahead of Ayrton Senna, who is 11 seconds ahead of Schumacher, who is 13 seconds ahead of Patrese. Andretti is in 5th position and has been lapped. Later is 6th. Comas is 7th. Zanardi, Blundell, Berger are up to 10th. Suzuki is 11th and Fittipaldi is 12th. And we're back again with Prost catching Riccardo Patrese, 4th place.
Yes, and Schumacher yet another fastest lap, reducing the lap record, and that's brought him closer to Senna. He was 8 seconds behind Senna before this lap, and now he's reduced it by another second, and he's just over 7 seconds behind Senna. But remember, Senna also is on fresh tyres now, and it does take 2 or 3 laps for the tyres to get to their best operating condition. Strangely enough, they're quite slow to come in here, and I think that Senna will be able to fend off the Schumacher challenge once he gets his tyres moving. And we have Jonathan in the McLaren pit.
Yes, once again, James, it seems that tyre wear is higher than Goodyear expected. Senna's tyres are worn considerably more than they thought, and that would intimate that he should go a fair bit quicker on the new set.
Thanks, Jonathan. We've got a blow up here, and that looks like Leto. He had another quiet, but unspectacular, but nevertheless good race, but disappointment for him, and whatever that is, that looks terrible. So now, Senna has responded to the Schumacher threat and put up his own personal fastest lap as he goes past the stricken Sauber, and in fact, I think Schumacher probably had a bit of traffic then. He did a slow lap, and Senna's back to over 7.5 seconds of cushion.
Prost is now on his 56th lap, and poor JJ Leto, of course, has lost 6th position in going off there, which means to say that the joyful Larousse team have now got somebody in the top 6 places, because Eric Comas, the Frenchman, in this all-French team, apart from the engine, has moved up into 6th position. Prost leads. He's a long way ahead of Ayrton Senna. Schumacher is some 8 seconds behind the Brazilian, but catching him. Is he catching him fast enough? I think not. Patrese has still not been lapped by Alain Prost that you're looking at, and the yellow and green Benetton of the veteran Italian, who's driven in more Grand Prix than anybody else, is ahead of Alain Prost. And in 5th position, it's Michael Andretti, who looks as though he's about to finish his first Grand Prix, or finish in a Grand Prix for the first time, to be absolutely exact about it. And yet another lap record, but this time from Senna. So he's got the message. The message is that Michael Schumacher is going faster than you, and if you don't pull the bung out, you are not going to finish in 2nd position. Oh yes, I am, says Senna, and goes a bit faster, and he is on his 57th lap out of 65, albeit 43 seconds behind Prost.
Yes, and that in fact is the fresh tyres coming in, and I see the McLaren pit ready again, and that'll be for Michael Andretti, I would have thought, to give him fresh tyres because of the somewhat alarming level of wear on the set that came off Senna's car. And I'm just looking to see Michael Andretti has an enormous cushion over sixth place Eric Comas, so there's no problem about doing this stop, and this stop really at this stage of the race is will cost them time overall. They won't make it up in what's left, but as Michael Andretti comes in, there he is for his stop, but it's for safety reasons really, in case they were actually right through a tyre. And that was better. They had that delay on a rear wheel on Ayrton Senna's car, which so nearly cost him at Donington when they had a similar delay, and Schumacher has responded now with another fastest lap, and we do have a battle developing between Senna and Schumacher, because Senna meanwhile was held up on that lap and the gap is under 5 seconds now.
Yeah, Senna was held up by Aguri Suzuki, the man who got a stop-go penalty at Imola for holding up Carl Wendlinger, and that's given, and we're with Prost again, who's just pacing himself behind Riccardo Patrese. Alain does not seem to be making any great effort to get past the Benetton. Now, there is Schumacher, and he has fairly flown past Aguri Suzuki with a new lap record that you've just heard about. They're on lap 59 out of 65. Prost has gone through. He is on his 59th lap, so Schumacher has still got to complete his 58th. My apologies. Prost lapping in about 1 minute 25.8, very well within his capability, but it's a long way before Ayrton Senna goes through, and not so very shortly after him, 4.6 seconds as you look at the caption there. Now, Senna's just gone through, 40 seconds behind Prost, and Schumacher is 3.4 seconds. You can see the McLaren in second place. You can see young Michael Schumacher, undoubtedly the finest driver that Germany has produced since before the war. The great days of Rudolf Caracciola, Hermann Lang and the like, and Bernd Rosemeyer, who drove for Mercedes-Benz and Auto Union. Michael Schumacher is rightly the hero of Germany. He won at Belgium last year, and he's got 4 second places and 5 third places behind him already in his short Grand Prix career. It's his 27th Grand Prix here. He is on his 59th lap now. But if he catches Ayrton Senna, remember they're both using the same type of Ford V8 engine, the HB, although there's a lot of contention about the fact that allegedly the one with the McLaren develops less horsepower than the one in the Benetton. Benetton have an exclusive contract to use the latest series of Ford V8 engine, and if Schumacher catches Ayrton Senna, to use the old cliche, catching is one thing, getting past is quite another, particularly when the man you've got to get past is Ayrton Senna, who is a past master of making his car as wide as it needs to be to stop the other car getting past. But Fittipaldi is in the way of Senna. Is he going to let his fellow Brazilian through? And having done so, is he going to hold up Michael Schumacher? This is the excitement in the closing stages of the Spanish Grand Prix, with Alain Prost 35 seconds ahead of Senna. The lead is shrinking all the time between Prost and Senna, but it's because I'm sure Prost is just pacing himself home. He's on his 60th lap now in this 65 lap race, and meantime Michael Schumacher is going faster and faster. Now that's Fittipaldi in front. We're with Schumacher's Benetton Ford. Fittipaldi has also got a Ford V8 engine in the Minardi. The young Brazilian is getting invaluable racing experience at Formula One level with the new Minardi Ford, which is a much better car than last year's, and he's staying ahead of Michael Schumacher, who will be desperately anxious to get past at this point, and does so. And I wonder whether the gap between him and Ayrton Senna has increased a lot. It will undoubtedly have increased, because I think Senna sliced his way past Fittipaldi more convincingly than Schumacher did, because he was at the right part of the circuit to do it. Now Schumacher goes into the right-hander to complete the lap. Senna is 32 seconds behind Prost, and the gap between Senna and Schumacher is still 3.4 seconds as it was in the previous lap. So Schumacher lost nothing on that lap. We're on lap 61. At the end of this, lap 62, 63, 64 and 65. 4 laps to go, apart from the one they are on, and the man you are watching is the leader, a very convincing leader, 32 seconds. Prost is on his way to his 47th Grand Prix victory. Far more than anybody else. Ayrton Senna, who is currently running, as you know, in second position, has won 38 Grand Prix, and these are the rivals in modern Formula One racing. And Prost, of course, is allowing the gap to shrink because he's still making absolutely no effort, really, to get past Riccardo Patrese, who you see in the yellow and green Benetton in fourth position, in his highest potential finishing place of the season. So Prost on lap 62, 3 laps to go for him at the end of this one.
Yes, all very straightforward stuff for Prost. No interest in passing Riccardo Patrese, and it's around the Benetton team and Patrase's drive that rumour and speculation has centred this weekend in Barcelona, with the news that last Monday Sheridan Finn, a friend and representative of Nigel Mansell, was seen in a London restaurant eating with Flavio Briatore, head of Benetton, and with Bernie Eccleston, and that led to people speculating that it was already well known that Patrase's job was under review, but that a possible replacement could even be Nigel Mansell himself, who's not having the happiest of times in IndyCar racing, as Michael Schumacher continues there. You saw Senna's car from his camera, you had his view of Senna, and he's got markedly closer, smashing the lap record all the time. He's broken it time and again in this chase, has Schumacher. Senna interrupted that progress once, but the story has some logic, but Senna is caught in traffic, Schumacher's closing up, and if it does happen, well, it'll be wonderful for Grand Prix racing, and we'd love to see Mansell back in here in a team and a blow up ahead, but that will only hurt Senna's progress, as Schumacher and Zanardi trailing tons of smoke, but he keeps out of the way, and Schumacher off, possibly on oil from Zanardi's Lotus, and it's all drama here. Well, far too much excitement.
Well, Zanardi was in sixth position, and you saw that Michael Schumacher has possibly blown his chance of getting second place, because they're now on lap 63 out of 65, and the gap was up to 3.8 seconds. Not a lot, 0.4 of a second more than the previous 2 laps, but to catch Senna at 3.8. Now, there's Zanardi with his engine blowing. Schumacher runs very wide onto the grass across the rumble strip, bringing grass and earth with him. Now there's a replay. You can see that's Zanardi's car with the oil smoke pouring out of the back of it. It's the second time that he's had an engine problem, because at Imola, if you remember, in the closing stages of the race, when he was challenging for a place in the points, he had a gigantic explosion, flames out of the back of the car, the left rear wheel came off, and he toured very much to a standstill. But now we're on lap 64. Alain Prost is on the penultimate lap. Only this and the next separates him from the checkered flag.
Yes, and just to complete that Benetton story, as the speculation is that Mansell would come and take over from Riccardo Patrese and give up his oval racing aspirations, although we have no knowledge of what he wants to do himself. We know that Roseanne, his wife, who's been his best advisor for many years, is very anti-oval racing for him. And in the meantime, it would then be expected for Michael Andretti, particularly after today's performance, which really can't give him a lot of hope for the future, would like to go back to what he considers to be his car and the car he developed that Mansell has been driving, and race there, which would open the door for Mika Hakkinen, who sat so patiently in the wings at McLaren this year. So it's a jolly nice story, everything fits, but nobody's quite sure whether anybody wants to do it.
I would take money that it doesn't happen, but don't hold me to that. But Alain Prost now, after having driven an absolutely immaculate race and taking the lead from his teammate Damon Hill on lap 11, has demonstrated yet again that his nickname of the Professor is the right one to apply to him. His race has been smooth, It has been calm, and he has not put a wheel wrong. And he now has about 2.5 miles to go between him and his 47th Grand Prix win.
Yes, another fine professional job by Alain Prost. Once again, we saw his patience at the beginning of the race when Damon Hill made the better start. He played himself in gently, turned up the pressure steadily, and then swept by into the lead. And really, it was all over. I think the Williamses were playing with each other a little bit, and that they weren't really racing, certainly not in a totally committed way. And then, most unfortunate for Damon Hill, the engine blow-up. That's a very, very rare problem with Renault, that it should happen in a race, considering all the miles of testing, because they hardly ever have engine trouble. And that cost him 6 points. But the grateful recipient of those points will be Ayrton Senna, who will be pleased that he's managed to retain second place, because he's had a pretty dramatic last few laps, what with a delayed pit stop, an unexpectedly long stop, which put Schumacher in range and then having to fight off Schumacher. So Prost coming up to the line.
To take the lead in the World Championship, and Alain Prost wins the Spanish Grand Prix as he did in 1988 and 1990. 10 points takes him into the lead in the World Championship, 4 points ahead of Ayrton Senna. And in third position, Michael Schumacher, with Damon Hill in fourth position in the World Championship. But in the race, of course, Prost wins. Senna, you just see across the line. There is Gerhard Berger finishing sixth for Ferrari's only second point of the year, as you watch Michael Schumacher finishing in third place, and we wait for his teammate Riccardo Patrese to come through. But he has been passed and by Alain Prost, so he finishes a lap down. Race order in Spain then, Alain Prost the winner, and we're with him now. And incidentally, if you wondered what that lettering in the middle of the steering wheel is, it's instructions to him for how to set up the active suspension. That's just a thought. Prost the winner, Senna second, 18 seconds behind the Frenchman. In third place, Michael Schumacher, 10 seconds behind Senna. In fourth place, and the second Benetton, Riccardo Patrese, his highest finish of the year. Michael Andretti not only finishes a Grand Prix for the first time, but finishes in the points to score 2 World Championship points for himself and for McLaren. Within sixth position, the Ferrari of Gerhard Berger, some reward for a very determined Spanish appearance, both in practice and the race for the Austrian, and it's only Ferrari's second point of the season. Seventh, Mark Blundell. Eighth, Christian Fittipaldi. Ninth, Eric Comas. 10th, Aguri Suzuki. 11th, Thierry Boutsen. In 12th position is Rubens Barrichello, so both the Jordans are home, although not in the points. And in 13th position, the last finisher, Derek Warwick, in the footwork, because Zanardi retired with that colossal engine problem and was then 5 laps behind. So Alain Prost, my apologies, my mental arithmetic didn't work very well in the stress of the moment, is now 2 points in the World Championship ahead of Ayrton Senna. And that won't please the Frenchman all that much, because as I said at the beginning of this race, he is very concerned about the potential performance of Senna and the McLaren Ford at the next Grand Prix, which is at Monaco on May the 23rd. The most exciting and glamorous Grand Prix of them all, the street race around the streets of the Principality. Michael Schumacher, by finishing third in the race, is now third in the championship with 14 points, having displaced Damon Hill, who moves down to fourth position in the championship. And of course, Williams have increased their Constructors' Championship lead to 12 points over McLaren, with Benetton in third position, some 15 points behind McLaren. Charlie Whiting, the FISA scrutineer in the blue shirt, is just waiting to get the cars into the Parc Fermé, an enclosed area where they are examined by the scrutineers. That is Michael Andretti, who must feel very pleased that at last he's broken his jinx and has finished in a Grand Prix, having failed to do so in South Africa, in Brazil, in Donington, and at Imola in the San Marino Grand Prix, and by doing so has scored World Championship points. Well, an eventful Spanish Grand Prix. The Williams, which I said was fabled for its reliability, was unfortunately let down by an engine problem in the Renault department, and that's very, very unusual indeed. And Damon Hill thereby failed to get his second place. Would he have beaten Alain Prost? Well, you've heard James say that it looked a bit more like an exciting demonstration than an exciting race for the lead, but who knows? We never will, because Damon Hill did not finish. Alain Prost the winner again then, and he goes to Monaco with a World Championship advantage over his main rival in Formula One, and has been for a very long time, ever since Ayrton Senna joined the McLaren team in 1988 to become world champion 3 times between then and now. Alain Prost, another 3 times World Championship winner. Michael Schumacher, the most outstanding newcomer of Formula One in the last couple of years, finishes 3rd on the podium again. He's almost making it his property, the podium, with his regular appearances. This very sensible, pragmatic, young, old head on young shoulders, German Michael Schumacher. Riccardo Patrese has retrieved some of the honour that he may unfairly have thought that he had lost by finishing his highest position of the year. And you're watching Ayrton Senna now. Riccardo Patrese in 4th place, and that means to say that both the Benettons, of course, were home, as were both of the McLarens in the top 6 World Championship points positions, with Gerhard Berger finishing in 6th position. Some encouragement for Ferrari, but not a lot. This great and proud Italian concern, which has had such a marvellous career in Grand Prix racing, won't be very satisfied with 1 point. So Schumacher on to the 3rd step of the podium. You can see Alain Prost making his way to the highest. The yellow overalls of Schumacher, the blue overalls of Alain Prost, the red overalls of Ayrton Senna, who has still, as far as we know, not actually signed for McLaren for the whole season.
A ser o especialista das pole positions. Alain Prost conquista aqui a sua 47ª vitória. Ayrton Senna é o piloto que está mais perto e tem 38. Prost ganhou, comandou durante a maior parte do Grande Prémio, mais precisamente durante as últimas 55 voltas, mas não teve uma vitória fácil. Damon Hill deu-lhe luta, pôs em causa o primeiro lugar de Alain Prost ao longo de muitas voltas.
Yes, and we see again Alain Prost lifting the victor's trophy above his head, and a very happy indeed Alain Prost. His day's work fully productive from him, and Ian Harris, the team manager of the Williams Renault team, picking up the team trophy. Ayrton Senna standing to Alain Prost's right, and not a great deal of communication between these two former teammates, and they never really were friends as such. It didn't take very long for the two strong personalities to come into opposition, and that was way back in 1988, and the battle of words continued all through the winter time regarding Prost's decision to veto Ayrton Senna at Williams. Well, this man always looks delighted when he's on the podium. Michael Schumacher once again showing the kind of enthusiasm really it would be nice to see from Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna. Well, he's much younger, and maybe by the time he's reached the the number of Grand Prix completed, then he maybe will be a little bit more weary of it all.
Michael Schumacher is now taking third place away from Damon Hill in the Drivers' World Championship, while the champagne is being sprayed.
Well, Ayrton Senna already off the podium. Michael Schumacher spraying Alain Prost. Caps and so on and so forth being thrown to the crowds beneath. And in a few moments now, the three drivers will move off into the press conference, and we'll join them in a few moments.
We zijn in de persruimte, we zijn in afwachting van het relaas van Alain Prost. We hoorden hem net eventjes vertellen dat hij zware vibraties in de auto had gehad. We gaan even luisteren naar het gesprek.
Turning to you first, Alain. A well-regimented victory, but one where your teammate Damon Hill pushed you hard for 2/3 of the race before engine failure put him out.
Yeah, it was going quite well. Especially, I mean, first part of the race he was leading, and then I was able to overtake him. My car was handling well, and then he was catching me and pushing me a lot. I had some problems with traffic sometimes, but the car started to jump a lot, and I was very tired. And physically I did one of the most difficult races I've never done before, and it was going quite well, and if he was able to keep pace like this, it would have been very difficult for me to stay ahead.
You didn't stop for tyres, both McLaren and Benetton did. If Damon had continued to push you, do you feel he would have had to have come in?
I had almost decided that if he was able to overtake me, and I would stop for tyres, because I would take the chance to finish better. But anyway, I was very limited by the physical side today. I mean, the car was jumping so much. Suddenly it started to jump in a very strange way, and on this track, which is very demanding on the physical side, I could not drive much quicker than that, much more.
Turning to you, Ayrton, a relatively quiet race, but one where towards the end you were trading fastest laps with Michael. Did you feel under pressure from him?
Yes, after my pit stop we were pushing each other quite hard, and it was a question of just getting clear circuit. I had several big moments with traffic where people blow up an engine in front of me 2-3 times, and last time I got my visor full of oil, and that was 5-6 laps from the end. And I had a tremendous big problem just to see them, and even if I tried to clean the visor, I couldn't get a clear visibility anymore. He was pushing hard, he was going very fast, and I was limited with few problems I had in the car, so I was just trying to go as hard as possible and as hard as necessary to stay ahead of him.
As far as the team is concerned, though, welcome Constructors' Championship points with your teammate Michael Andretti finishing a Grand Prix for the first time and in the points.
Well, I think it's great for the team to have two cars finishing the top 6. I think it's a good time for Michael, finally finishing a full Grand Prix distance, and let's hope he can keep up with the pace.
And finally to you, Michael, a string of fastest laps towards the end saw you catching Ayrton for second in the closing stages. Presumably the incident behind Zanardi didn't help you.
Yeah, that's right, it didn't help me. I think I had the same problem as Ayrton. Was behind him, got all the oil from him on my visor. I was thinking he's going to stop and give him the line, but he didn't really. He stayed on the line, and I tried then to overtake him on the outside because he was so slow. But there was so many dirt on the outside, I just couldn't turn in anymore, and I just went straight into the gravel bed. And actually I'm quite happy to finish because of this. As well, my tyre change was the reason of we got vibration in the tyres, and because of this vibration I got a gearbox problem, and gearbox was shifting all the way up and down itself, and I had some nice moments by this, but anyway I was quite lucky to finish this race, and third position is a great place for our team and for me.
Thank you, Michael. So just turning and looking forward 2 weeks, Monaco. Nobody else has won at Monaco since 1983. Ayrton has won 5 times, Alain 4. What do you think the chances of levelling the score are, Alain?
I think it's going to be very difficult. I'm sure that Ayrton is going to push very hard at Monaco. The difference we have with the engine power is going to be, less important in Monaco, and I think it's going to be very hard.
Your feelings, Ayrton?
Wait and see.
And Michael, of course, you must relish the opportunity of racing at Monaco. You've gone there well there in the past.
I think Monaco should be as well for us a circuit which will be good. Especially we can hope for the traction control in Monaco. I'm waiting since I don't know for it, but now it should arrive for Monaco, and this will certainly help us, and maybe we can close up the gap to the other front runners.
So we've got a lot to look forward to in 2 weeks' time. To all 3 of you, congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
John, your remarks on this?
Well, I think Senna's comment about wait and see, it doesn't tell us whether he's going to be racing or not. It just means, but it says wait and see. But I still stand by what I said. I think that Williams and Prost and Renault and Damon Hill will have the advantage, and we know how good they are in qualifying. And